Diana's charitable work and public persona became integral aspects of her legacy, and through them she redefined what it meant to be a royal in the modern era. While the pressures of her personal life often left her feeling isolated and misunderstood, she found a deep sense of purpose in the causes she championed. Despite the emotional turmoil in her marriage and the relentless media scrutiny she faced, Diana's commitment to philanthropy and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life became her most enduring achievements. Diana's early forays into charity work began shortly after her marriage to Prince Charles. Initially, her public duties were largely ceremonial, but Diana soon found that she had a powerful platform to raise awareness for various causes. What set her apart from previous members of the royal family was her willingness to engage with the most marginalized communities. She didn't merely attend galas and hand out awards. Diana immersed herself in the causes she cared about, often getting involved in hands-on activities that gave her a personal connection to the issues. She became a passionate advocate for causes such as homelessness, HIV/AIDS, and the fight against landmines, issues that were often overlooked or stigmatized at the time. One of the most iconic moments of Diana's charitable work came in 1987, when she made a groundbreaking visit to a hospital in London to meet with people suffering from HIV/AIDS. At a time when the disease was highly stigmatized and many feared it, Diana made the courageous decision to shake hands with AIDS patients without wearing gloves, a simple yet powerful gesture that challenged widespread misconceptions and opened up a public conversation about the virus. Her willingness to engage with people who had been cast aside by society made her a beacon of compassion and humanity, forever altering how people viewed the disease and its victims. Another defining aspect of Diana's charitable work was her dedication to the campaign against landmines. In the 1990s, after visiting Angola, Diana became deeply moved by the plight of landmine victims and the immense toll the weapons were taking on civilian populations. In 1997, she made a now famous visit to an active minefield, where she walked alongside deminers to raise awareness about the devastating impact of landmines. Her actions drew international attention to the issue, and her advocacy helped pave the way for the signing of the Ottawa Treaty, an international agreement to ban the use of landmines. Diana's direct engagement with such critical issues set her apart from her royal peers, making her a figure of change in the monarchy. Throughout her life, Diana's public persona evolved alongside her charitable work. Initially, she was seen as the picture-perfect princess, but as she became more outspoken and began to share the struggles she faced, both personally and within the royal family, she gained a much deeper connection with the public. Diana was one of the first royals to openly discuss her mental health, and her willingness to speak about her struggles with bulimia, depression, and the isolation she felt within the royal family helped break the silence around mental health issues. Her openness about these personal challenges made her seem more human and relatable, and her vulnerability endeared her to people worldwide. Despite the chaos of her marriage and the invasive media coverage she endured, Diana's role as a public figure remained unparalleled. Her fashion choices, her interactions with the public, and her emotional intelligence made her one of the most photographed women in the world. But it was her compassion and humanity that truly resonated with millions. She was not just a royal, she was a woman who used her position to advocate for the voiceless, someone who had the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it wasn't popular. Diana's legacy as a humanitarian and royal icon is as much about the lives she touched through her charitable work as it is about the way she reshaped public perceptions of the royal family. She was a pioneer in using her position to address social issues, and her efforts inspired future generations of royals to embrace causes beyond traditional royal duties. Her work continues to inspire those who believe that true leadership is not just about holding a title, but using one's influence to drive positive change.
Do you think you'll ever be queen?
No, I don't. No.
Princess Diana's marriage to Prince Charles began in a whirlwind of public excitement, but it quickly unraveled under the weight of private turmoil. Diana Spencer, the shy 19-year-old from an aristocratic family, found herself swept into a relationship with Prince Charles, who was then 32. Their courtship, which blossomed in the early 1980s, was heavily scrutinized by the media, yet it was marred by uncertainty and doubts. The age gap and their differing levels of maturity were glaring, but what truly destabilized their relationship was Charles's lingering affection for his former lover, Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana suspected from the outset that she was not Charles's first choice, a fear that was confirmed when, during their engagement interview, Charles gave a famously vague answer to the question of whether he loved her. His response, "Whatever love means," caused Diana considerable distress and planted the seed of doubt about the sincerity of their union. Despite these misgivings, the wedding took place on July 29, 1981, in one of the most televised events in history. The world watched as Diana walked down the aisle in a lavish gown, and millions saw it as the fulfillment of a fairy tale dream. However, behind the scenes, cracks began to appear almost immediately. Diana, who was thrust into the rigid confines of royal life, struggled to adjust to the monarchy. She felt isolated and unsupported, with her mental health deteriorating amidst the intense public scrutiny and the coldness she experienced within the royal family. Charles, meanwhile, was often absent emotionally and physically, preoccupied with his ongoing connection to Camilla, which had never truly ended. The marriage's problems became increasingly evident. Diana's sense of alienation deepened, and her suspicions about Charles's loyalty turned into painful reality. She learned that he was still in contact with Camilla, and the constant strain caused by his affair led to public displays of her pain, particularly during their official engagements. Diana's emotional turmoil was often visible, and the world watched as she struggled to navigate her royal duties while dealing with profound personal hurt. Her sadness turned into desperation, and in a heartbreaking act of self-harm, she threw herself down the stairs, while pregnant with Prince William in 1982, though the baby miraculously remained unharmed. The marriage began to deteriorate further, and by 1992, the couple had separated. Diana's candidness in interviews, especially her famous 1995 BBC Panorama interview, shattered any remaining illusions of royal harmony. In this interview, Diana famously declared, "There were 3 of us in this marriage," referring to Camilla's role in their relationship. This moment not only exposed the bitter reality of Diana's marriage, but also marked a turning point in her relationship with the royal family. No longer willing to maintain the facade of royal stoicism, Diana broke the unspoken rule of silence, speaking openly about her struggles with mental health, her loneliness, and the emotional devastation caused by her husband's betrayal. The divorce, finalized in 1996, brought a sense of closure, but it was also a public rupture of the royal ideal. Diana, though no longer married to Charles, continued to maintain a significant public presence, her humanitarian efforts earning her worldwide admiration. Her marriage to Charles, however, remained a painful chapter in her life, a story of a young woman who was thrust into an impossible situation, and whose personal happiness was sacrificed in the pursuit of royal duty. Though she found new purpose in her charity work, the damage caused by her marriage to Charles remained a defining aspect of her life, until her tragic death in 1997. The tragic death of Princess Diana on August 31, 1997, in a car crash in Paris, was a moment that not only shattered the world, but also marked a pivotal turning point in the history of the British royal family. Diana's sudden and untimely passing, at the age of 36, sent shockwaves of grief through millions of people, many of whom felt a deep personal connection to her. A beloved public figure, Diana was more than just the Princess of Wales. She had become a symbol of hope, compassion, and change. The events of that fateful night, and the aftermath of her death, would forever change the course of history for the monarchy and the British people. Diana, along with her companion Dodi Fayed, had been staying at the Ritz Hotel in Paris. The couple, attempting to escape the overwhelming presence of paparazzi, tried to leave the hotel discreetly through the back entrance, but their efforts proved futile. The relentless photographers who pursued them in their car had already caught wind of their movements. The situation quickly escalated into a high-speed chase, as Diana and Dodi tried to evade the photographers who followed them through the streets of Paris. The driver, Henri Paul, was attempting to outmaneuver the photographers, but it was reported that he was under the influence of alcohol at the time of the crash. The chase culminated in the car crashing into a pillar in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Both Dodi and Henri Paul died instantly, and Diana, though still alive at the time of the crash, succumbed to her injuries shortly thereafter. The world was thrown into a state of collective mourning, but it was also thrust into a vortex of confusion and conspiracy. The details surrounding the events of that night raised questions that would haunt the public for years to come. Why was the car speeding? Was the crash truly an accident, or was there something more sinister at play? The media frenzy that followed only fueled these questions. Speculation abounded, with many suggesting that Diana's death might have been orchestrated or that foul play was involved. The paparazzi's role in the incident, and the possibility that their relentless pursuit had led to the crash, became a major point of contention. Despite an official investigation that concluded the crash was an accident caused by reckless driving, conspiracy theories continued to thrive, suggesting that Diana's death was part of a larger plot. The emotional toll of Diana's death was immense, particularly for her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. The grief of losing their mother at such a young age was compounded by the very public nature of the tragedy. Diana's death was a global event that transcended the royal family, and the media's constant presence was both a source of public sympathy and a reminder of the intense scrutiny the family faced. Her sons, in particular, were thrust into the spotlight, forced to navigate their personal grief under the watchful eye of the world. Both William and Harry would later speak about the deep impact their mother's death had on their lives, with Harry describing how he struggled to cope with the loss in his younger years. In the aftermath of her death, there was a sense of disillusionment surrounding the royal family, and many questioned the monarchy's response. The public's grief over Diana's passing was not just about the loss of a beloved figure, but also about the perceived coldness of the royal family's reaction. For many, the initial lack of a public show of mourning from Queen Elizabeth II and the rest of the royal family was seen as a stark contrast to the outpouring of emotion from the public. This moment of public dissent and questioning led to calls for a more modern and relatable monarchy, one that could better connect with the people it represented. The royal family's response to Diana's death did eventually evolve. Queen Elizabeth, after a period of reflection, addressed the nation in a live broadcast, speaking of her sorrow and acknowledging Diana's impact on the world. Her words helped to quell some of the public's anger, but the damage had already been done. Diana's death had exposed cracks in the royal institution, highlighting the tensions between the monarchy's traditional image and the evolving expectations of the public. Her passing also had a profound effect on her charitable legacy. The causes she had championed during her lifetime continued to flourish in the years following her death. Her sons, in particular, carried on her humanitarian work, with both Prince William and Prince Harry dedicating themselves to causes that Diana had cared about, such as mental health awareness and landmine removal. Diana's humanitarian efforts, though often overshadowed by the tragedies of her personal life, would leave a lasting imprint on the world long after her death. In the years that followed, there would be numerous investigations into the circumstances surrounding her death, but none would definitively put to rest the many unanswered questions. Despite the official verdict, the mystery surrounding Diana's death remained a subject of speculation, fueling conspiracy theories that continue to this day. Some claim that Diana had feared for her life, even going so far as to write a letter suggesting that her death might be staged in a car crash. Whether or not there was any truth to these claims, Diana's death remains one of the most enduring and poignant mysteries in modern history. Ultimately, Diana's death marked the end of an era for the British monarchy. It exposed the vulnerabilities of the royal family, forced them to confront their public image, and reshaped the way the monarchy interacted with the British public. Yet, it also solidified Diana's status as a cultural icon. Her death, as tragic as it was, became a defining moment in the legacy she left behind, a legacy that endures in the charitable work she initiated and the profound impact she had on the world. The role of the paparazzi in Princess Diana's life is a deeply complicated and controversial aspect of her story. Diana's relationship with the media was one of both fascination and torment, as the public's insatiable desire for glimpses into her personal world often bordered on obsession. She was undeniably one of the most photographed women in the world, and her every move was captured by photographers who pursued her relentlessly, often to the detriment of her well-being. The relationship between Diana and the paparazzi became a defining element of her life, culminating in the tragic events of her death. From the moment she became engaged to Prince Charles, Diana's life was thrust into the public eye. While her youthful beauty and charm captivated the world, it also meant that every detail of her private life was scrutinized. The paparazzi, ever eager to catch the royal family off guard or in moments of vulnerability, quickly turned their attention to Diana. As she navigated the complex and often cold world of royal life, she found herself constantly followed by photographers, who camped outside her home, at her children's school, and at every royal engagement. What began as curiosity about a young, new royal turned into an obsession with every detail of her existence, from her wardrobe to her emotional state. Diana, who had a keen sense of how the public viewed her, often struggled with the invasive nature of the paparazzi. She was subjected to constant press coverage, some of which was invasive and even downright cruel. Her personal struggles, including her troubled marriage to Prince Charles and her battle with bulimia, were laid bare in tabloids and magazines. The relentless pursuit by the paparazzi not only affected her mental health but also shaped her public persona. It became a cycle where the more the press hounded her, the more she withdrew, yet the more they seemed to desire her attention. The paparazzi, viewing Diana as a prize catch, seemed to take pleasure in chasing her to the farthest corners of the world, capturing intimate, unguarded moments. While some saw Diana's relationship with the press as a mutually beneficial arrangement, she used the media to communicate her messages about charity, compassion, and humanitarian work. There was a darker side. The constant intrusion into her personal life made it nearly impossible for Diana to find any peace. Photographers used aggressive tactics, such as hiding in bushes, trailing her car, or even employing long lenses to snap photos of her in the most private moments. Diana's children, Princes William and Harry, were also frequently targeted, and it was this continuous exposure that led to Diana's growing resentment of the paparazzi. Her relationship with the media reached a tragic zenith in the final days of her life. On the night of the crash that took her life, Diana was being chased by a group of photographers as she and her companion, Dodi Fade, attempted to leave the Ritz Hotel in Paris. The pursuit of the couple by the paparazzi led them into a high-speed chase, with the driver, Henri Paul, speeding through the streets of Paris to avoid the photographers. The press pack followed in hot pursuit, hoping to capture images of the princess and her companion, no matter the cost. In the end, the pursuit was deadly. The car crashed into the Pont d'El Alma tunnel, killing both Dodi and Henri Paul instantly, while Diana, severely injured, died shortly thereafter in the hospital. The photographs of the crash site and the dying princess, taken by the same photographers who had pursued her to that very moment, marked the tragic conclusion of a relationship that had been built on a foundation of exploitation and intrusion. The aftermath of Diana's death saw the media come under intense scrutiny. Public outrage at the role the paparazzi played in her demise reached a fever pitch. The British public, who had once adored Diana for her beauty, charity work, and personal struggles, now turned their anger towards the photographers who had relentlessly pursued her. Questions were raised about the ethics of the paparazzi, and their role in contributing to her untimely death was widely debated. While some of the photographers who had chased Diana on that fateful night faced legal action, the issue of paparazzi behavior was far from resolved. The public's demand for accountability highlighted the darker side of celebrity culture and the price of fame, one that often bordered on exploitation. In the years that followed, the paparazzi industry would face increasing scrutiny and regulation. Diana's death led to widespread calls for a shift in how photographers interacted with public figures. In particular, new laws were introduced in several countries to limit the tactics employed by paparazzi. In the UK, for instance, laws were passed that made it illegal to photograph children in certain circumstances, and regulations were put in place to limit the activities of photographers who stalked celebrities. Diana's life and death remain a sobering reminder of the darker side of celebrity, where the boundaries between personal and public life become blurred. While the media and paparazzi continue to play a major role in the lives of public figures, the lessons of Diana's tragic end have led to changes in how the media approaches its subjects. Still, the exploitation that Diana experienced at the hands of the paparazzi will always be an indelible part of her legacy. It's a haunting testament to the price she paid for being the people's princess, forever at the mercy of those who demanded to see every moment of her life, no matter how painful it might be. Paul Burrell's role in the life and legacy of Princess Diana is marked by controversy, loyalty, and ultimately, betrayal in the eyes of many. Burrell, who served as Diana's butler for over a decade, was one of her closest confidants, particularly during the most turbulent years of her life. He entered the royal household as a young man, quickly rising through the ranks due to his exceptional work ethic and attention to detail. His relationship with Diana was more than professional. It became one of deep trust and mutual respect. He was often her confidant, supporting her through personal struggles and public hardships. As Diana's personal assistant and butler, Burrell was privy to intimate moments, both personal and professional, which would later become a point of contention after her death. After Diana's tragic passing in 1997, Burrell's role shifted from loyal servant to a figure embroiled in scandal. In 2002, he was accused of stealing over 30,000 items from Diana's estate, including letters, photographs, and personal belongings. Burrell maintained that he had been entrusted with safeguarding these items by Diana herself, believing that she feared they would be misused or exploited after her death. The allegations sparked a media frenzy, with the public divided between those who saw him as a loyal protector of Diana's memory and those who believed he was exploiting her legacy for personal gain. The trial that followed captured global attention. Burrell's defense that he had acted with Diana's blessing was seen by some as a credible claim, while others viewed his actions as opportunistic. The turning point came when Queen Elizabeth II made a public statement, revealing that Burrell had informed her about keeping some of Diana's belongings. This revelation undermined the prosecution's case, leading to the charges being dropped. Although he was acquitted, the damage to Burrell's reputation was already done. His decision to sell his story and share personal details about Diana's life further fueled the public's perception that he had betrayed the princess's trust for financial gain. Despite his acquittal, Burrell's actions left a lasting imprint on the legacy of Diana. Many questioned his motives and integrity, with some believing that he had used Diana's memory to remain relevant in the public eye. Others, however, still see him as a man who remained loyal to his late employer, attempting to protect her legacy even as the world turned its back on him. In the years following the trial, Burrell published books and gave interviews, continuing to share his version of events and his close relationship with Diana. His portrayal of Diana as a woman who had confided her deepest fears about the royal family and her life in the public eye ensured that the mystery surrounding her death remained alive, even as many sought to move on. Paul Burrell's legacy is one of contradiction. He remains both a key figure in preserving the memory of Princess Diana and a controversial figure whose actions sparked debate about loyalty, exploitation, and the ethical use of a public figure's personal life. His role in Diana's story is one that will likely be debated for years to come, with some seeing him as a trusted servant and others as a man who capitalized on a tragic loss for his own benefit. Regardless of public opinion, his name will forever be linked to the enduring mystery of Diana's life and death.